Well, voting for the country's new Legal Practice Council set for this month marks the start of a new era in the legal fraternity. Now, the entire profession, both practicing and non-practicing attorneys and advocates, will soon be regulated by a unitary body, the Legal Practice Council. Well, the National Association of Democratic Lawyers and the Black Lawyers Association, focused on transforming the demographics of the legal profession, have nominated 16 people for election. Nadal's advocate Kerusha Pillay is one of the young advocates at the forefront of the struggle to eradicate the skewed demographics that still prevail within our country's legal profession. She joins us on the desk now. Good afternoon, Advocate Pillay, and thank you so much for making time to share with us on the SABC News Desk, especially on a weekend.
Good afternoon, Keshni. Thank you very, very much for having me and giving us this platform today.
You're welcome, Kerusha. Just to start with, can you give us some background on Nadal, the National Association of Democratic Lawyers and the Black Lawyers Association, and elaborate on their role and the impact they've made on the legal fraternity at this juncture in the country?
Well, perhaps the place to start with is to say that Nadal and the Black Lawyers Association are two voluntary associations of lawyers in South Africa who have been in existence for in excess of 3 decades. And they seek to eradicate the skewed demographics of the legal profession. Now, the impact of the skewed demographics is that it impedes access to justice and it undermines the constitutional imperatives and the access and the realization of civil and political rights.
Just on that point, Kerusha, I want to dig a little bit deeper and really get a sense of how skewed demographics, as you call them, or white privilege dynamics play out in a courtroom or in the legal sphere.
Well, let us look at what the position was before these organizations came into existence. The position was that the legal profession was very much dominated by white males. Yes. Now, that extended to all aspects of the profession. So firstly, the access, to the legal profession was regulated and held very tightly by white males. So if you took a black law graduate and you took a white law graduate, both of these graduates would have required, in order to practice as attorneys, to secure articles of clerkship. Now, I hail from a family of attorneys, and my dad once related a story to me where he said that when he finished his studying, he then had to secure articles of clerkship, and he applied to a very prominent white law firm in Pietermaritzburg, which is a very small town. And he was told that there was no position and his application was unsuccessful. Very shortly thereafter, he was at court one day and he bumped into a white student who had been at university with him. And he asked him, so were you successful? Where did you get articles of clerkship? And he mentioned to him that he had been successful at the very same firm that he had applied to. And he had done so very recently. Our retired Chief Justice Dikgang Moseneke, in his book My Own Liberator, relates a very similar story. And I think there are many, many, many legal practitioners who have experienced a similar position.
Kerusha, just on that point, 30 or 40 years on since your dad applied for his articles or his clerkship, how difficult was it for you as a young black female advocate or legal practitioner to break into such a male-dominated sector, navigate your way through there and find your select niche? What are some of the hurdles you faced?
Well, before I deal with the hurdles, I think it's very important for me to say that now that we are 3 decades later, it has been very much easier in the sense that there is a realization that there is a need for more females to be allowed entry into the profession. So that has not been a problem. But the problem has been in terms of career growth and development. There is a presumption which still prevails that females are not as competent as their male counterparts. And if you are a black female, you are very far more disadvantaged than the males are, or even a white female for that matter. So in terms of your career growth when it comes to specialized areas of the law, so for example, competition law or intellectual property law, if I would compare a white counterpart of mine who has had extensive experience in these areas of law, naturally they would be more advanced than I am in terms of my career development. But it's because of a lack of opportunity that I've not been exposed to that, and I've therefore been unable to develop the skills in that regard.
All right. What steps have you as Nadal and the BLA taken to address some of these imbalances?
Well, Nadal and the BLA have taken a lot of steps. So, for example, they provide free legal training to candidate attorneys. They provide free training for aspirant judges. They also assist and provide financial assistance to young black lawyers who wish to establish their own firms. They also give them training, for example, when it comes to accounting practices and financial management of their firm. They are also very actively involved in the governance of the profession. So currently the profession is regulated by the Law Society of South Africa and the General Council of the Bar of South Africa. And Nadal's involvement, the BLA's involvement, and also Advocates for Transformation's involvement in these regulatory bodies has resulted in, for example, the discipline of attorneys and advocates being watched with a very careful eye. In the past, because the discipline and the regulation of the profession were controlled by white males, it was a very common occurrence that black attorneys and advocates were often treated vociferously with the harshest punishment for the least serious conduct, while their white counterparts were treated very much differently. They were often not even disciplined, and there was such a huge disparity in the treatment that was meted out.
Very quickly, I want us to go into the purpose of the Legal Practice Act and how will the governance and regulation of the legal profession be impacted by the Act going forward?
Now, the purpose of the Legal Practice Act is to transform and unify the legal profession. So it was passed in the response to the recognition of the main challenges that the legal profession faces. The first challenge is the issue of access to justice, and the second challenge is that there needs to be more representativity of the diversity which is prevalent in South Africa in terms of the demographic representation of legal practitioners, of prosecutors, and of the judiciary. Now, dealing with the issue of how the Legal Practice Act will impact on the governance and the regulation of the profession, as I've mentioned, the profession is currently regulated by the Law Society of South Africa, the General Council of the Bar of South Africa, and the independent advocates are then regulated by their independent regulatory bodies of their choice. Now, when the Legal Practice Act comes into effect on the 31st of October of this year, there will be one uniform body, which is the Legal Practice Council, which will regulate both of these professions jointly. That body will exercise the disciplinary functions, it will take over the vocational training, and it will deal with the basic regulation of the council. It will establish 9 provincial councils, and they will have their delegated functions.
Kerusha, the high costs of legal services in South Africa are often a huge concern when it comes to access and issues of affordability. But when you read through some of the rules there, it does come up the envisaged maximum fee tariffs, and these shall be prescribed by the Rules Board and later the Minister of Justice. Can you just elaborate a little bit for us on that note?
Well, as you have mentioned, the high cost of legal fees is something which greatly impedes access to justice in South Africa. And I think the imposition of maximum tariffs and regulating the tariffs will greatly assist to make justice more affordable to the general public. The other way in which the access to justice will be improved by the Legal Practice Act is that currently we have a referral profession. So attorneys refer work to advocates. They obtain the client and they then refer work to advocates. So the client ends up paying for 2 legal practitioners, and often that escalates legal costs phenomenally.
Exorbitantly, yes.
Okay. So now the Legal Practice Act makes provision for a third type of legal practitioner. That is an advocate who elects to practice with a trust account. So if an advocate makes such an election, they will have to have a trust account as attorneys do currently, but they can accept a client off the street. So a person who has a problem doesn't have to go to an attorney first. They can directly approach the advocate, and they will only have to pay that advocate as opposed to paying 2 legal practitioners.
Thank you. Advocate Kerusha Pillay joining us on the SABC News Desk. Thank you so much for sharing your invaluable insights with us.